super thrilled to have Case Lawrence here today. Case is a great man and a wonderful friend. He's a great example of building an incredible business all across the country. I'm not going to take any time to do more than that because I know Rebecca's going to do an introduction. So with that, let's welcome both of them. Thanks.
Thanks, Dan.
So have a seat. Thank you so much, Case.
Thank you.
And thank you to all of our audience. This is a great turnout today. It's fabulous to see so many new faces. And thank you, Darren, for the introduction. First off, I want you guys to raise your hands if you've been to House of Tricks in downtown Provo. Awesome. What did you think? Oh, man, I went when I met Case, but I haven't been to play. I definitely have to go back there. Oh, yeah. Who? Darren asked you a question. Raise your hand if you want to go. All right. We should have a RevRoad night at the House of Tricks.
Let's get a date.
Make it happen.
We'll get a date. We'll make it happen.
All right.
Can you hear me? Does my mic work? Is that? It's hard to tell on yourself if it's working or not. Little faded. How's that? Good? Thank you.
Oh, thank you for the mic check. So CircusTrix, as you guys probably know, started with just one location 7 years ago and has grown to hundreds of locations all around the world. But rather than have me talk about it, let's watch a video about your business. I understand you have the clicker?
The clicker will start it. There we go.
From the moment we come kicking and screaming into this world, we have one desire: to move. And as we grow, it gets stronger. But the world is always trying to control it. Slow down, no running, stop jumping on the couch. But we say, keep moving. In 2004, Sky Zone opened their doors and invited the world to come play, redefining indoor recreation by providing new places for people to jump, fly, and move like never before. In 2011, CircusTrix came along and disrupted the industry by reimagining what a trampoline park could be. We added extreme attractions like ninja courses, wall tramps, and trapezes, all for people to push their limits. And today, CircusTrix and Sky Zone are joining forces to form the #1 indoor recreation company in the, wait for it, world. We have more than 300 locations, and we're still moving. Soon, people all over the world will be able to come to our parks and fuel their desire to move. We're partnering with a rising generation of new athletes who are defining the world's fastest growing extreme sports. Which means kids will take a break from their screens and build a real-life social network. But experiences still fuel social media. So instead of using their phones to binge watch a show on Netflix, they'll be using it to share how they're ripping it up in our parks. And in 2018, we're giving them a new brand to embrace. Defy will be the go-to park for the stunts and tricks of the newest extreme sport. And Sky Zone will be the go-to place for people who want to experience new ways to play. This is where we're moving, and we won't stop until the whole world knows CircusTrix parks are the place to set free your most natural desire, to move.
Great video. That's so much fun. So now, who wants to go? Who wants to go try that out? Hopefully, just about all of us. I'm even more excited. You had me like dancing up here. Now, speaking of moving, this company has moved very, very quickly. Talk to us about its beginnings, kind of what you were expecting, and then what happened.
Yeah. So my story is actually an example of one of several reasons people become entrepreneurs. And One is, we talk about all the time, just an idea takes hold of them and there's a passion. And there's a whole spectrum then of different motivations that cause people to become entrepreneurs. One of them, though, one motivation is that some people become entrepreneurs through desperation. Mm-hmm. And that might be a little overstated, but I think the dynamic is very real. If you look at recessions, I was just looking at numbers on this recently, that entrepreneurial activity increases during recessions. And I think it's that dynamic at work. People are forced to reevaluate and potentially do things that they wouldn't otherwise do, including take risks that they wouldn't otherwise take. And in many instances, it's because they've got less to lose. And there is an element of needing to do something. And my story really begins that way. I'm an attorney by training. I say now I'm a repentant attorney. But I began developing commercial real estate in California in the early 2000s. And it was at a time when it was a good time to be in real estate in California.
Sure,
Interest rates were historically low. Build out was rapid. And I was developing commercial office space and commercial industrial space in California right up until what we now call the Great Recession of 08, 09. People put different year brackets on that recession, but I was a stereotypical California commercial real estate developer during that recession. And that's kind of where, some of the heaviest fighting was happening in that war. And without going into too much detail, I'm happy to answer questions about it in the Q&A, but I had 2 large commercial loans, 2 huge projects that I was doing at the time with 2 banks. One was a big national bank, one was a local bank, and caught me right during the development of these projects, and I was in big trouble. I spent 2 years of my life working with the special assets person at both of these banks that I was indebted to.
Oh, wow.
And, most Fridays I would go home during that 2-year span wondering if I would have to declare bankruptcy on Monday. It was that ominous. And many miracles, a lot of prayer, and frankly just miraculous intervention in many ways. I was able to avoid bankruptcy. And I tell people to this day, no matter what I ever accomplish in business, at CircusTrix, anywhere, my greatest accomplishment in business was avoiding bankruptcy during the recession.
Yeah, so many people didn't at that time. That must have been terrifying.
It was an odd time to be in real estate.
Odd is one way to put it.
Very odd. And that segues well, kind of, sorry to take a long way to answer your question.
No, you're great.
I finally was able to get things worked out with these banks and walk away a free man, to use a phrase. But, there was no prospect of a future career in real estate at that time. And that seems weird now to say that, but anyone I knew in real estate back then, there was not even the prospect that you would continue to try to do it. It was just dead. There was nothing happening. And so I needed to find a job. And I began to take steps. I was getting my continuing education caught up on my bar license, which I had allowed to go inactive, so I paid my dues and I got that brushed off the shelf. And about that time, I took my boys up. I was living in Central California at the time, and I took my boys up to a Giants baseball game. We're big Giants fans. And took them to a game, and a friend of mine had said, hey, while you're there, you ought to go check this place out in San Francisco. It was at the Presidio, which is where they had redeveloped the military base there. And they had taken, an entrepreneur had taken one of the old hangars there at the Presidio, right by the Golden Gate Bridge there, and had turned it into a trampoline park. And I heard this, and I couldn't even conceive in my mind what a trampoline park was. It was such a bizarre idea. But I took my boys there, and we just had an incredible experience. I mean, it truly was an epiphany type of experience. And I remember just being blown away at how odd the whole thing was. There were people there. I could tell it was in San Francisco. little bit older crowd, so there were adults, mostly adults, young adults there. They were in social groups, so it was a social activity. They were in yoga pants and shorts. They were sweating. It was this physical workout aspect. There was house music playing on the speaker system, so there was kind of this
Fun. Yeah.
club, fun music environment. There was art on the walls, and it was colorful and this whole aesthetic element to it. And then there was a competitive element. I was sitting there with my boys playing trampoline dodgeball with complete strangers, throwing dodgeballs at their head and being thrown at.
What a ride.
And it was such a weird mashup of all these different things. And so I left that trip, and I knew as I left, and my boys and I were feeding off each other and getting each other excited, but I knew I was going to do one of those.
Oh,
I said,
wow.
I can figure this out. I think I can do this. It's kind of like developing real estate. I'll figure out where to get this and get that, and we'll put it together. And so I did my first one in Madera, California. But we opened that first park. It was 12,000 square feet, which is very small, relatively. Today, I was just in Seattle this weekend for the BYU game. Unfortunate result there, but we have a park in Seattle. I was there visiting. Is almost 70,000 square feet. So we've come a long way in sort of our evolution and size. But that's a long way of telling you how I got into this business.
And you thought it was just going to be the one park, right?
Yeah. So to me, I remember sitting around with my wife with our Excel spreadsheet. It was mentioned earlier this morning. And I had made a little pro forma. It was a one-page worksheet on Excel. That was my pro forma. And I'd figured it out. And I told my wife, I said, listen, if we can make $5,000 a month from this thing, that will be a lifeline to me to get my bar license back together and get my law career back on track. It was always just sort of a project, a side project to create a little cash flow to then figure out what I was going to do. I never had the idea that this could be a large business and it could scale. It just didn't occur to me. I wasn't that entrepreneur who had that vision from the beginning at all. So, and that's how it went for me. We did one. I did a second one in North Carolina. I did a third one in Albuquerque. I did a fourth one in Birmingham, Alabama, of all places. Fifth one in Richmond, Virginia. So it really started off for me. My entrepreneurial journey was to do one project at a time. And I always looked at them as projects. And then by the fifth one, I realized there's something here. Each one of these is performing better than I have expected. And so we've got a tiger by the tail here. We need to figure out what to do with this. And that's when I started thinking of it more as a company, as a growth idea, as something to build as an entity.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's so interesting. So are they all corporate? Are they franchised? Or how does that work out?
Well, that question is a great question. It's actually a great segue into, I think, one of the topics you want to, we talking about here, which is fundraising.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because, really the history of the trampoline park industry, which is fairly
short
new.
history.
Yeah,
right?
It's a very short history. It's a case study, really, about capital. The whole industry is defined by people's access to capital. And what I mean by that is I wasn't the first one, to invent a trampoline park. It was out there. And Sky Zone, as mentioned in the video, was the first trampoline park. It opened in Las Vegas by accident. The Platt family, who are now part of our company and good friends of mine, but it's a great story. The dad had gotten a patent on a new game, and it was a game played on a field of trampolines. And so he'd gone to Vegas and bought a warehouse and outfitted it with trampolines to run this game.
Oh, wow.
And it was a complete failure, as probably most of you in this room would have figured out if you would have been presented the business plan. But it was just this wild game, people flying around on trampolines with padding on, and he was about ready to close the doors, and there were some skaters. There was a skate park kind of down the road, and they had been begging him to come in and jump on the trampolines. And when he was just about to close the business down, he finally told these skaters, he said, all right, I've got nothing left to lose. I'm going to let you pay me $5 a piece to come in here and jump. And my friend Jeff Platt, who's with our company now, tells the story. You know, it was just each day there were 20 more new jumpers. But that was in 2004. That was significantly before me. But when I started in 2011, there were probably less than 10 in the country. So there really hadn't been any growth between 2004 and 2011. Mm-hmm. And it was because of capital. There was really no capital available to build one of these things other than your own cash. And they're pretty large scale projects.
Right, yeah, a lot of building.
There's a lot that goes into that. So what my friend Jeff Platt had done and what all the others before me had done is after they built one and exhausted all their own capital, they would open it up to franchise, because that was sort of the lane, if you will, that was available for them, for other people to utilize their capital to build a park, because you couldn't get a loan. If you walked in 2011 to a bank and said, I'd like a loan to build a trampoline park. What's a trampoline park? It's a big building filled with trampolines that people jump on and hurt their ankle on. No banker was going to lend on that. So there was no bank financing available. So it was really either franchise, or if you were able to scrape up angel, private one-off angel investors, scrape them together to get enough to do one of these parks. Those were really the only choices available to people. Mm-hmm. And so most of our industry decided, based on those constraints, to go the franchise route. And it's a very logical response to the capital restraints and environment that existed. That's exactly a smart move to go.
And by that, do you mean open a franchise or become a franchise?
Yeah, become a franchise, basically.
Oh, okay.
So to say, look, we have some expertise here. We know what we're doing. We've done one of these now. We understand it. How do we take advantage of that? Well, we don't have the capital to do 10 of them, but we can open our shingle for business to franchise them to others who may have the capital to do them. And that's what they did. That's what Sky Zone did. And Rock and Jump, Sky High, some of the other early movers in our space.
Yeah.
We were really fortunate. I did my first one. I remember how much it cost. I'm going to share with you. It cost $430,000.31. I still have my budget on my spreadsheet. A small little 12,000 square foot place, and I was, I borrowed money, used every savings dollar I had. I had a deal with the guys, the crew building it, where I was going to pay them gradually after we opened every month, and they were good with that because it was the recession. They needed work. I had all these harebrained deals worked out to try to pay people later. I even got my landlord, who I was renting this space, I got him to pitch what we call tenant improvement allowance dollars toward trampolines, which I can't believe I was able to do. I wouldn't be able to do it again today.
Good work.
But it was just, it was miraculous. So we got that built. $400,000 today, that park I mentioned in Seattle cost us $3 million to build. So the CapEx required to build one of these parks, they've gotten bigger and more sophisticated. So it just costs a lot more money, and that's too much money to build with just angel investors, with Uncle Jim's money. You just can't do that. So the first 5 that I built were angel deals. I scraped together money, we got them done, and it almost killed me. It was just so exhausting. And those of you in here, and many of you have taken angel money, or you're looking at doing that now. One thing I advise people and tell people is angel money, and when I say that, I'm referring to individuals writing checks for your business. That will be the most exhausting, high maintenance, high effort, high touch money you'll ever raise. Raising $400 grand from two individuals will take as much time and TLC and energy as raising $5 million from an institutional fund. That's the reality of that. It is a truth. And
But if you have a trampoline park that's unproven and has risk of injuries, you have to, right?
That's right.
You had to.
That's right. And so we did that, and we did our first 5 that way, and I was ready to be done because of that. I just said, there's no way I can go out and keep raising money and also doing what I need to do to develop these parks. 5 is enough. I'm done. It's great. And about that time, kind of through serendipitous means, I was introduced to a group in Palo Alto called Peary Partners.
Okay.
And they were an investment group. They were a family office, which was a big advantage to me. I didn't realize it even at the time, but anyone know the difference between a family office and like a venture capital fund? The number one reason, the number one difference is a family office is managing their own money. And most venture capital funds or earlier stage investment groups have limited partners. So they have other people's money that they're investing. And the dynamic that creates is that they are a business and they have a very definitive business plan that they have to stick to. And they've committed to that business plan to the limited partners who've given them money. And it gives them very little leeway to really get creative about what kinds of deals they're doing. And the Peary family, who, just a great family. Some of you may be aware of them. They're an LDS family in Palo Alto. The dad, kind of the father of commercial real estate in California.
Oh, wow.
And they have a family office there in Palo Alto. And because it was their money, they were able to be very flexible about what they invested in. And they liked this idea. They liked, we developed a good relationship. And so we did a deal. And we started off by doing 4 parks. They said, we're going to fund 4 of these and we'll see how it goes. And that was unheard of. That was, in our industry, it was the first kind of big private investment in these parks that had happened. And it made all the difference. It made all the difference. And I tell people, the right capital at the right time from the right people is strategy. Like in our industry, in our company, that is the number one thing, that the difference maker that has helped us to win in our industry has been our capital relationships and kind of being first to those milestones. This was one of them, to kind of have a private equity or a private investor at a large scale put money into our business. And so to just give you a synopsis, those 4 parks did really well. Peary did very well. They came back and they said, now we want to do 12. And pretty soon we had a program in place where if something fit the right criteria, I could pull the lever with Peary. And the great thing about that was we were off to the races and we could just grow. And no other company in our space had that luxury.
Yeah.
They were all waiting for someone to come along to franchise a park or to buy a franchise from them. We were able to pick the best markets that we wanted to go in and just focus on growing. And so it was a great, that was, one of the very fortunate things that happened to us.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'm glad to hear it. And, it led to just kind of an adventure in this experiential economy that I definitely want to get to. But we asked the audience, in the invitations and stuff we sent out, to get ready with their questions for you.
Sure.
So I would like to jump to that portion. Tigran, please wait for a mic. He's the one who asked for the mics earlier.
Yes. So
Videographer in chief there.
Thanks, guys. Okay, so I have a simple question. Why do you change why is it every time different name for each park?
Great question. And now that you know a little of the history of our company, it will help answer this question in your mind. But when I first started doing these, like these first 5 I mentioned that I had different investors and angel investors on, those were 5 different LLCs with different investors. And I had to come up with different names for each one because they didn't really cross over. And so that was kind of how we got started. We had all these different names. And after we had started that way, we learned that it became clear very early that social media was going to be the key marketing channel for us. And we found it actually, in those early days, easier to build social media communities around unique brands in each market. Because our goal wasn't really to build these wide, broad followings across the country. It was to build a following in Richmond, Virginia, for that park in Richmond, Virginia. And so we found, and we kind of got a system going, as you discussed earlier, of building these social media communities around unique brands, and that became how we did it. And again, you have to realize we had no idea we were going to get so big. Now we have a lot of parks, and now a lot of smart people, marketing people, are telling us, now with your scale and your size, you need to probably take advantage of that footprint and brand it all in one brand. And it's been hard for me. I'm so, as a typical founder, I'm so wedded to what we did and that old system. It's been a little bit of them prying the branding from my fingers, but I'm convinced, I'm on board. And so we actually, that video gave it away. We are actually rebranding all of our parks. So all the Sky Zone parks will remain the same. All the others are going to become Defy. And that's happening. That'll happen in a rollout that's already started and will continue into next year.
So RevRoad night will have to be at Defy in downtown Provo,
That's
not
right.
House of Trix. All right.
I think
We'll note
will
that.
always be House of Trix, but for the most part, it'll all be Defy. Great question.
Great. We have a question over here, it looks like.
Thanks. Is this on?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think? Oh, there we go. So I'm curious, who uses the parks? Are we talking about mostly the rebels, the skateboarders, or is it more mainstream families of all kinds?
Senior citizens. Yeah. Great question. And it gets into some of the real sophisticated layers of our business. But to summarize it for you, let me start by telling you this. One of the reasons this industry has grown and been so successful is that it has a very broad age demographic appeal. So it's something that families can do together, of all ages of kids. It's something that teenagers and young adults find appealing and cool in addition to younger kids. So if you really step back and think about it, there are very few things that have, appeal across wider spectrums like that. And it's one, especially when it comes to fun and recreation. Typically what adults find fun is not what kids find fun. And so it's one of the reasons this industry has grown so quickly and been successful. In our company at CircusTrix, we're kind of known for, and it's something we realized early on, we actually came up with a name, and if you may have heard about this, but we, at meetings at CircusTrix, we set a place at our conference table for a kid called Landon. We've actually given him a name. It's anthropomorphic, if you will. He's an imaginary person, but he's a 17-year-old boy, and his name is Landon, and he has the last say on anything that happens in our parks on social media and in terms of the attractions in our parks. And what we found is if we voice to Landon on our social media and our marketing, and if we create our attractions to appeal to Landon, that if Landon thinks it's cool, we will thereby gain the rest of those age segments, and we don't sacrifice those age segments by focusing on Landon. Family entertainment in the last couple decades, someone got the idea early on that the more Chuck E. Cheesy, to coin a phrase, you make it is the way to go. And what we found is, no, the taste of American youth now with YouTube and all the digital and all the things they're exposed to, there's actually a high level of taste and expectation of production value by youth and everyone. And so what we found is if we make it cool for Landon, Landon is the cultural ambassador to the other age groups. Everyone else will look to Landon to decide what is cool. The younger kids will look up and see what the older teenagers think is cool. And ironically, in our culture, adults will look down at Landon to take their signals about what is cool or not.
So we all want to be 17-year-old boys.
We all want to be 17, and we're all taking our cultural cues from that sort of 17-year-old.
I think you're right. Yeah. I think one more question, and then we'll have to wrap it up probably. Is there any more audience questions? All right. I have a fun one from you. So all of the success you've had with CircusTrix, probably it's allowed you some opportunities that you wouldn't have had otherwise, or some indulgences to help keep the entrepreneurs here in the crowd revved up for what might come for them. Can you tell us what's something just awesome that you've been able to do because of your success?
I think you mentioned one of them. House of Tricks in Provo is actually not open to the public. It's my office, and it's kind of an indulgent man cave / office.
It's a large man
for
cave.
Me and my
yes.
family, and some of you have been there, and so that's been a really fun thing. I've got a gym in there. It's the old. If some of you don't know, it's the old BYU women's gym. And it's got a long history, and so we've had a lot of fun. I've had a lot of fun playing with that and remodeling it and kind of making it my office. And any of you who are in the area, you're welcome to stop by and check it out. So that's been one. My other personal indulgence is I'm a big sports fan, and sports tickets are like my fatal flaw, my Achilles heel. And so my kids are at an age where they love sports, they love games. So we probably, if there's anything indulgent, we're probably going to too many games, and we're too close to the floor on most of those games or the field. But that's one thing we've really enjoyed. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Well, and I think no such thing as too much fun.
Yes.
That's what we're here for. That's awesome. Yeah, well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Case has agreed or somewhat voluntold to stick around after. If any of you guys have more questions or want to talk to him more about the capital raise or the experiential economy that he's kind of, right on the cutting edge of, he would love to talk with you after. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Case, we'd like to thank you, and we have a couple of gifts for you to take with you today. A nice RevRoad bag and cool water for after the fun time over at the Man Cave office. Certainly appreciate you and the inspiration that you've shared today.
Thank you.
Great counsel and very true. So thank you again.
Thanks for having me.
Let's hear it again for Case. Thanks. I'd also like to thank JP Morgan Chase for sponsoring again. Those guys are fantastic, and I hope you had a chance to get to meet with them, and feel free to reach out to them anytime you'd like. Remember, tonight is Rev Up at 4 p.m. for any of you who'd like to join, and it's always a good time to be there, and our own Seth will be leading that. And then next month, the RevU will be on November 1st. It's the topic will be mentors and finding great mentors, making sure that those mentors and you have a great experience and that it can be really powerful. It will be with Dave Myers leading the charge on that, so we're really excited about that. And we'll be featuring a founder named David Sternlight. And David Sternlight is an incredible guy. I've had the chance to meet with him several times. He's the CEO of a company called Cabo. And if you've been in an airport any time in the last decade, you've probably seen his pillows. They have 14,000 retail outlets around the world, and he's an incredible guy. Our own Josh Cross here with Helios and GoPlug has recently inked a deal with Cabo for a global distribution for a product that they're working on for global tracking and luggage, and we're super excited about that partnership. David was a professional basketball player, played on Israel's pro team, and has just a fascinating history, and is going to share some great insights with each of us, just as you've heard some great insights from Case today. So with all of that, thank you for coming. Don't worry about cleaning up. We'll take care of it. Just mix and mingle and have some fun with each other, and thanks again for coming.
Thanks.